So good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining in today on our educator webinar to talk about Texas STEM Connections and how you can take advantage of this resource to find STEM volunteers and connect in STEM volunteers to your programs. My name is Tricia Berry. I'm the director of the Women in Engineering program in the Cockrell School of Engineering at UT Austin. And I also lead the Texas Girls Collaborative Project through our Women in Engineering program across the state. And I'm also representing the Central Texas Discover Engineering organization that's also one of the supporters of Texas STEM Connections. And so I'm going to start by telling you just a little bit about each of those programs, and then we'll dive in to the details of how to use Texas STEM Connections. Central Texas Discover Engineering is an organization that focuses on connecting STEM volunteers, engineers in particular, but really any STEM volunteer with classrooms throughout Central Texas. And Central Texas Discover Engineering is using the Texas STEM Connections portal as the primary way to be able to foster those connections and make that happen. So you can check out more about Central Texas Discover Engineering at engineerintheclass.org. Texas Girls Collaborative Project, which is run through our Women in Engineering program at UT Austin, is part of a national effort, part of the National Girls Collaborative Project, whose aim is really to connect and support organizations that are trying to get more girls engaged in STEM. And so here in Texas, we have regional efforts as well as a statewide Texas Women and Girls in STEM Summit each December, and a number of other initiatives that we do trying to help support organizations and individuals that are doing this work. And Texas STEM Connections and making those role model connections with students is one piece of that. Million Women Mentors Texas is an initiative of the Texas Girls Collaborative Project. It's also part of a national effort to really engage girls in STEM through volunteer engagement and through mentorship. And so the Texas STEM Connections effort here in Texas is one of our ways to support the Million Women Mentors effort, trying to get more mentor and volunteer connections across our state. And then last but not least, the Women in Engineering program at UT Austin exists to recruit, retain, and graduate women within the Cockrell School of Engineering at UT, and a lot of that involves engaging volunteers and role models with our students, with our current students, with our prospective students, in an effort to help them see what all those opportunities are for them with an engineering career, and thus Texas STEM Connections plays an important piece in that and helping us make those connections. So let's dive into the details of Texas STEM Connections. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to show some screenshots and talk through what the system is and how to use it. And then I'm going to switch over to my browser and we'll actually walk through the system so that you can see it in action. Texas STEM Connections is powered by Nepris. Nepris has an online platform that fosters these types of connections through virtual visits into classrooms and programs. And what we've been able to do with Texas STEM Connections through our partnership with Nepris is be able to customize the system to enable in-person connections to be made as well. So by going through Texas STEM Connections, volunteers and educators have the opportunity to connect for in-person volunteer opportunities. Through Nepris, the opportunities are limited to the virtual space. And so we're excited to be able to allow the virtual opportunities to still happen through Texas STEM Connections, but our focus is really on making those in-person connections as an opportunity for all. So what's it look like? So when you head to Texas STEM Connections, it starts you out on an intro page where you can sign up for a new account. It's super quick and easy. As you can see on the screen here, they're not asking for a whole lot of information to get you logged in. The key part from the educator or program coordinator standpoint, if you want to be able to request volunteers, when you enter in a new account and you list how you would describe yourself, you need to select that you're an educator, and that's what triggers the system to put you in the bucket of users who are able to request volunteers. Sometimes that gets a little confusing if you are an educator or if you're a STEM professional who also looks for volunteers. If you go in as a STEM professional, you'll only see the how to volunteer side of things, not how to request a volunteer. And so if it gets confusing, there's an email address on the website, and it will let you email us, and we can fix that on the back end if needed. But click that you're an educator, and then that will get you in on the side where you can make these requests. One little side note, if you go in through Nepris.com, if you've done that before and you have a Nepris login, you can use that same login to get into Texas STEM Connections, where you can access the free in-person requests. The virtual sessions do have a fee that's associated with them because of the time and labor that's included in making those happen. So just a little side note on that. But the Nepris logins do work on Texas STEM Connections if that's something that you're familiar with. So when you go in after you've logged in, the two key places that I'm going to talk about and really walk you through are creating the in-person session request and where you can look for in-person offers. So STEM volunteers are able to see requests that you as educators have made and sign up to help out with those, or STEM volunteers can offer up workshops and sessions that maybe they have done and are offering up for you to be able to select. So they can fall into a number of categories. They can be in school, they can be out of school, and maybe you're a field trip or a job shadow or an internship, or maybe it's related to a STEM camp or workshop. You can choose as an educator where you think your volunteer opportunity fits best. And that just allows the volunteers to be able to kind of categorize what it is that they're going to be heading into and what this type of experience is going to be when they sign up to volunteer. Making these requests are pretty simple. Again, you choose the kind of session that you want. You create a title for your session. The title, the more descriptive you can be in the title and the more clear that you can be in the title, the more likely a volunteer is to click on it and want to check it out a little bit further. That's kind of your marketing piece right there. So you want something that's going to grab their attention and be clear and descriptive enough that the volunteers will say, that looks good for me, that makes sense for me to volunteer with. The subject of the class or the program can be anything from science or biology to engineering. It can be really any descriptor of what that content is that you're looking for a volunteer to come in and help talk about. The grade level of who is participating in this, what are the grade level of the students that the volunteer is going to be engaging with. What is your class studying? That doesn't always apply if it's an out of school time, and that's why I have the little note there. Some of the questions and some of the descriptions of what you're filling in on these requests don't always fit with what your volunteer opportunity is, but these are open-ended fields, so you really can describe out your volunteer opportunity and write in there what makes sense for you and what makes sense for that volunteer to know about, and make it fit for your event. And we'll walk through that a little bit more when I show you the actual platform. One of the great things about this system is that once you've entered your request, it's going to recommend some volunteers within the system who might be a good match for that opportunity. And you can invite them to your opportunity, and it will automatically send them an email to say, hey, you've just been invited to volunteer for this opportunity that was just put into Texas STEM Connections. And it drives the matching process kind of for the volunteer and the educator through email, which is nice. It sets that up so it shows up in your inbox when something's happening within the online platform. You don't always have to log in order to figure that out. It also lets you message these volunteers, or you can check out their profiles to see if these are people that might match up with what you're looking for. So you can directly connect with them through the system as well. And then it doesn't just automatically match you up with people. It allows you to have the opportunity to check out whether the volunteer that maybe has expressed interest in one of your volunteer opportunities, whether they fit, and if you approve them or decline them from participating. And again, it does all of this through email, so you're notified one way or another of if you have a volunteer who's expressed interest and you need to go check out their profile and see if they fit and then approve them, or if maybe they don't quite match up with what you're looking for. And then again, it does a lot of this through email, so it allows you to be able to also provide additional information once you've confirmed with a volunteer. And I threw in here some of the key elements of a role model interaction. We have some great resources on the Texas Girls Collaborative Project website that talk you through how to ensure that that role model interaction, that volunteer interaction, is a positive experience for both the volunteer and for you and for your students. And so these were just a few tips and reminders to make sure that there's good communication that's happening so everyone is very clear on what the expectations are and how to make that a great experience for all. Once the volunteer opportunity is all complete, you can mark it complete in the system, and then this archives it within your request systems within Texas STEM Connections, so you can refer back to that later. You can be able to make connections with those volunteers again and have that as a record of your experiences. So with that, let's flip over to the actual system, and I will walk you through what Texas STEM Connections looks like. So here's Texas STEM Connections. You can get to it by typing out texasstemconnections.org. txstemconnections.org will also get you there. And then once you get to that site, it flips you to the NEPRIS address, as you can see up here in the bar. So I've already signed up. To sign up, it again just asks you for some minimal information about who you are and what type of educator or volunteer you are, so that it gets you in the right part of the system. I've entered as an educator into the system, and so this is what it looks like currently. The middle part here and the videos that they're sharing from virtual visits that have happened in the past are ever changing, so different things will show up on here at different times when you log in. What I want to show you are a few things to take note of. So this little person up here on the right on the menu is where you can find your account settings and your profile settings. And so while the system only requires minimal information to get logged in and just asks you for your name and your organization, and are you an educator or a professional for a volunteer for volunteering, you can go into your account settings and your public profile and add in a lot more detail about who you are and where you work and what you're looking for, and that helps with the matching system on the back end. So I encourage you, once you've logged in, to go add in more information to your profile, and that helps everyone be able to know a little bit more about you. The key place where I'm going to walk us through, and the place where we typically spend the most time, is in the session part of the menu. So when you click on session, there's a variety of things that come up as an educator. And I'm just going to show you a couple of things that might be of interest before I show you how to make a request. The video library, while making video classroom requests does have a fee associated with it. The video library is available to be able to peruse and to explore. And so you can find videos that have happened in the past and be able to access those. You can browse the video library and see different types of videos that come up with different topic areas and subject lines. I was going to click on one of our UT alums that did a day in the life of a chemical engineer in the past. And you can see a short little video that you can see. You can bookmark it, and you're able to access that and read about that and learn about those videos in that search capability. So you can also browse in-person offers. So as I mentioned, volunteers have the opportunity to offer up their expertise, offer up workshops, offer up tours, a variety of things. And so if you click on Browse In-Person Offers, it brings you to a list of in-person offers that have been made. And I'm going to show you this one from Women in Aviation that is being offered up from a high school student in the Dallas area who is engaged in aviation. And so she's putting out there that she is able to come and speak and able to excite young kids about aviation and flying. And she, in her descriptions and some of the documents that she has shared, talks about what that means. And so if this is something that as an educator you're interested in, you can click on the Show Interest button, and it's going to communicate to the volunteer that you're interested, and it'll start to engage that dialogue back and forth between you all to see if you can make something happen. So that's a pretty cool feature that is fairly light, I would say, in offers at the moment, but we're hoping will start to increase as we let people know about this as an option. So the last thing I wanted to show is how to make these in-person requests. So here in, again, the session menu, there's Create In-Person Session Request. So if you're looking for volunteers, this is the place to go. You're going to create an in-person session request. You want volunteers to come in person to engage with your students and your programs. So this is what it looks like when it comes in, and we're going to actually fill this out. So we're going to assume that we're doing an in-school volunteer mentoring session. The content below looks the same regardless of which one of those that you choose. So that really is just to help kind of categorize for the volunteer where they're going to be headed. We'll do one of my previous sessions because it pops up in there, our high school camp lunch with an engineer. What's the subject? The nice thing about this field is that it'll start to pull up different things that have been entered in the past, and you can select them, or if you don't find something that's matching up with what you're doing, you can enter it in there and it'll add it. What grade level? It lets you pick specific grades or groupings of grades. So you can see the things that have been entered in here in the past. I'm just going to pick high school. And then this is the place, this is where you have to get sometimes creative and be very descriptive in what it is that you're asking for a volunteer to help you with. So what is your class studying and what have they been doing with this topic? So if I'm wanting to invite in volunteers for lunch with camp participants, for example, which is what I have entered most recently, that's not necessarily a class, but they are in a camp and they are learning about engineering. They're learning about different engineering majors. They're learning about college. They're learning about what you can do with your engineering degree. They're learning about classes that they might take on campus. And so I might enter all of that type of information into this field. I'm not going to do that now because that would take too long, but that's what you might include in that first box. In the second box, what would you like your students to learn from the industry expert who comes in, and what are some of the questions? So again, since I'm wanting to bring in volunteers in this example for lunch, I want my volunteers to share about their career stories. I want them to share about their educational experiences. I want them to share about their struggles and their what they love about being an engineer, maybe a cool project that they've worked on. And I want them to be able to answer questions from the students. So I might write all of those types of things into this box here. But again, for sake of time, I'm just going to type engineering. What do you want your industry expert to do in this session? So this is where, again, the more descriptive that you can be, the better the chances of an engineer or scientist or volunteer choosing to help you out. So this is where you really want to tell them, here's what's happening, when it's happening, this is what to expect, this is what the timeline and agenda looks like, here's how this is going to flow, this is what's happening. And again, the more descriptive you can be, the better it is for everybody, and the more likely you are to have a volunteer go, I know what they're looking for, I can do that, that's exciting. You hit the Save and Next button, and it's going to take you to the location section. So this is where you're going to enter in where you are having this event and where you are located. I can't get it typed. There's Texas. And this is where it's important, can't type. This is where it's important to make sure that your address is correct, because it's going to map to your location, and that helps volunteers see if this is a good place for them to be able to make it to. These are categories that aren't necessarily required, but you can enter them in if interested. I usually leave these blank just so that it opens up a wide variety of volunteers who can perhaps see this in their search when they search for different opportunities. But you can indicate different industry preferences, you can indicate different skill sets, you can indicate specific companies or career pathways if you are interested. And again, those are not required. I usually leave them blank, but if you do have some specific needs or interests, you can enter those in. Next, if you have flyers, if you have program information, if you have volunteer instructions or anything that would be helpful for volunteers to be able to see, you can attach documents here. Again, that's not required, but it is an option for you to be able to attach things. And then last but not least, you would enter in when your event date and time are happening. If your event is over multiple days, you can click that here. If your event runs over a runs over a length of time, then you can indicate that as well. We're just going to pick a random time and date. If you are flexible on the time and date for your event, which a lot of times people have flexibility in when you can bring in volunteers, you have to pick an event time and date here, but back in the descriptions, you can include that times and dates are flexible. I would almost write that in every single one of those boxes so that's clear to the volunteer. You can describe in those boxes before, in that describe request section, the flexibility, the time ranges, the different dates that you might have as an option, and really use those fields as a way to communicate what you're looking for. How many volunteers would you like for your session? You can enter that there. How many students are involved? We're going to pick a lot. That's going to be a big lunch. And then you can tell people tell the system how long you want this request published. So I had entered that my lunch is on Friday. I want to know by Thursday if I have volunteers or not, and I will enter that date. Additional notes, this is the information that you might put in to indicate to the site administrators any special circumstances that you have, any information that you would want to share about your event. And then you click the button there that you're agreeing to the terms and conditions. And last but not least, you want to make sure that you hit publish to publish your event. If you hit save, it saves it in draft mode and you can come back to it later. But to make sure that it gets published and is out there for others to see, you want to hit the publish event. You can see at the top, it's got Lunch with an Engineer. This is our title. This is what everyone sees as a volunteer when they go into the system. So you can see why this is really important to have it be very descriptive. It's got the event date and time over here on the side. There's the map that I told you about, which is why the location is important. And then it lists who the requester is and what's some of the additional details down here at the bottom. So if I'm interested in searching for volunteers at this time, I can do that. I can enter a zip code and see any distance from Austin who's going to show up. And it'll allow me to be able to connect in with volunteers that it shows in the system. Right now it's shown it didn't find any good match for me this close of date, and is specific, or in my case, really lack of specificity of my volunteer request. Again, the more specific you can be in what you're trying to request, the more likely it is to pull up volunteers that it's going to recommend for you. But that's it. It's pretty easy to put in volunteer requests. It's pretty easy to be able to search for different offers, and it makes it super simple for volunteers to be able to find what it is that you've entered. So I'm going to flip back to a few other slides, and I think we have some questions I'll come back to. Let me flip back to a couple closing slides to answer some questions. So Michelle is asking about how is this system different from the paid NEPRIS subscription. NEPRIS does not have in-person volunteer opportunities within its system. So the paid NEPRIS subscription can be used through Texas STEM Connections to do the virtual side of things, but NEPRIS.com does not have the in-person volunteer systems available. And so Texas STEM Connections has the system of in-person requests and a volunteer base behind it that are helping to make those in-person connections happen between STEM volunteers across our state and those requests that come in. But it does not focus on the virtual side of things, although that virtual side of requests is available through Texas STEM Connections because we're using the NEPRIS platform. So to wrap it up, again, Texas STEM Connections, it was created to be able to allow for educators and program coordinators and anyone who's looking for those STEM volunteers to be able to make those requests for volunteers to come into your classrooms in person or into your programs in person for free. So we pay for the system to be able to make those connections. We are on the back end working hard to engage volunteers across our communities to connect in. We have a couple of monthly newsletters that go out through different networks that highlight the volunteer requests that are in the system, so that we're pushing those volunteer requests out to volunteers so that they don't have to necessarily log in. We don't have to rely on them logging in and searching for your opportunities. We're really trying to pay attention to what those requests are and push it out widely. We have marketing materials available that you can access that talk about all of these instructions in much more detail for volunteers and educators and companies. And there's other resources for finding role models and volunteers as well through our Million Women Mentors effort, and fabfems.org is a great online resource and tool that also is a database of STEM role models that I encourage people to check out. We have Google groups across the state that are all about STEM things that I encourage you to also think about joining in on. And you can find those at tinyurl.com/STEM Google groups. And last but not least, Texas STEM Connections is brought to you by Central Texas Discover Engineering, our Texas Girls Collaborative Project, and our Million Women Mentors Texas effort, and the Women in Engineering program at UT Austin. You can find all of this information on our Texas Girls Collaborative Project website. I've saved the presentation there. You can also request this presentation from